welcome Tudor Dixon.
Hello, everyone. Thank you. This is the hour of strong and powerful women. You just saw that panel, which was amazing. Having Secretary Betsy DeVos in our state is an amazing thing, isn't it? She is an incredibly powerful woman and courageous woman who fights for our children, which is inspirational to me. In fact, my first AFC meeting, American Federation for Children, was in 2017. And I remember going there and thinking, wow, choice for our kids is so important. Of course, that was before we knew what was going to happen in 2020. How many of you want to be in charge of your own child's education? For me personally, it started before 2020. I saw that and I saw how impactful this had been on other students' lives. But then my daughter went from elementary school to middle school. And in that transition, I saw a child that started to get depressed and started to fail in school. She came to me and she said, "Mom, I'm scared at this middle school. I went from my elementary school where I was protected to middle school where I don't know how to make friends, I don't know how to connect with my teachers, and I want to try a different school." Little did I know that that information that I got in 2017 was going to prepare me as a parent to say, wow, we need to be able to make choices for our children. But then what I saw in the next year, COVID hit at the same time, I took her out of her public school and we went to the private school locally, and I saw a little girl that went from being depressed, having anxiety about school and struggling with her grades, to a child that is thriving. The best part was, 3 months into school, my daughter came to me and said, "Mom, even in elementary school, I would have been afraid to raise my hand, but now I'm known as the kid that goes out and tries to answer all of the questions." That is the power of choice in parents' hands. And I think after this year, we know that even more than ever. And I thank Secretary Betsy DeVos for that, because she was the one that started the program that allowed me to understand how important it was to make those choices for my daughter. But strong women, this is honestly a celebration of strong women today. We have a woman here with us who is the first female graduate of the Citadel. That is pretty hardcore, if you ask me. I think that's amazing, don't you? Not only that, she is now a congresswoman for the great state of South Carolina. She is a congresswoman for the 1st District there. But to top it all off, she has the hardest job under the sun, and that is also that she does it all while being a single mother. Give it up for Congresswoman Nancy Mace and strong women.
Good afternoon, everyone. First of all, I want to say thank you. It is such an honor to be here with you all, and I'm sure you have one burning question in your mind right now, which often my 12-year-old has, is who are you and why are you here? My name is Nancy Mace, spelled like the pepper spray, only sweeter unless your Twitter handle has the word AOC in it. And then we might have some words. But really, honestly, it's a true honor to be here. I'm here to learn, to get informed, to get inspired, and to save our country. There is so much at stake. There are 2 things each of us in this room today care about. 1, our kids, and 2, our country. I'm 43 years old. I never thought I would be where I am today as a member of Congress. Many years ago, I thought by now I'd be dead or in jail. But I'm in Congress, so there's some time here. When I was 16, I was raped by a classmate of mine. And I had no hope for my future. It was the most horrible, horrific, traumatic experience I have ever had in my life. And too many women have the same experiences in their life. I turned to drugs, alcohol, and one day I came home right after my 17th birthday, and I told my father, who was a retired general, and my mom, who was a retired teacher, that I was never going back to school. So I dropped out of high school at the age of 17. And my parents given how strict they were and how hard they were on us growing up and loving. They did it because they loved us. But they told me, if you're going to stop going to school, then you've got to start going to work. So I took a job as a waitress at a Waffle House on the side of the interstate. Do you guys have Waffle House up here? No. We need to get some Waffle Houses up here. But I used to stand on a piece of duct tape about a foot wide, and I would yell to the customers, to the cooks in the back, how my customers wanted their hash browns. Smothered, covered, and chunked. One of the best jobs I've ever had in my life, certainly better than Congress. But I learned some very tough lessons during some very tough times. And this time in my life, I learned about the value of hard work. I also learned about redemption and second chances. A few months later, I would get my high school diploma by taking college courses at a local technical college, community college, in North Charleston, right up the road from where I grew up and where I was living. And I got my high school diploma, and this was in 1995. In 1996, there was a little-known Supreme Court case against VMI, or the Virginia Military Institute. And when that case was decided in the summer of 1996, Ruth Bader Ginsburg wrote the majority opinion that said if you were a state-funded college or university, you could not discriminate based on gender. That moment, that Supreme Court case, changed my life forever. And that was the day that the Citadel, the Military College of South Carolina, decided they would finally, 154 years later, admit women to the Citadel. Now, my father is a graduate of the Citadel, and I remember the school announced it on a Wednesday night. And on Thursday, I went down to pick up my application. On Friday, I turned it in, because in those days, we didn't really have internet. It was like 95, right, 96. And by Monday, the school had called me and told me I was accepted. The only problem was I had not told my family. Of course, my dad didn't want women there, right? Retired General Citadel grad. But when I went there, I didn't go there to be the first woman to graduate from the Citadel. I went there because I had something to prove to myself, and honestly, to prove to my family, that I could go to a place and be challenged, that I could face adversity, that I could face an obstacle unlike any other in my life, and I could be successful, that I could achieve something regardless of the challenges ahead. Graduated in 3 years, top of my class, magna cum laude, almost a 4.0. I never thought I could ever achieve anything like that, ever. So it's truly about the American dream. I had a dream, I set some goals, and I worked hard. Fast forward to 2017, I have 2 kids, and there was a state house race that was opening up in my district. And it was a special election. I won it. I served for 3 years. I loved every single moment of it. And I worked extremely hard. In 2018, when I had my re-election, my daughter was 9 at the time, and she's a political junkie. She would be here today if she could. In fact, she was calling me while I was driving down here from the airport, checking in on me, making sure I was okay. And she said, you got to text me when you get in your room at midnight last night. And she said, I don't care if I'm asleep, text me, because you're getting on a plane, then on a car, then you're getting on a boat, and then you're riding a horse. So she's totally confused by what I'm doing here. But she knows why I'm here. She's a political junkie. So we had my re-election in November 2018. We saw a lot of seats on the board that Republicans lost in the 2018 midterms. And the 1st Congressional District of South Carolina was one of those losses. And everyone thinks, well, it's South Carolina, it's ruby red, this is a slam dunk. This is Charleston, South Carolina, which is a totally different environment. This is a swing district. And when I saw that we had lost this seat, it was my daughter, we were looking at the returns, and she turned to me and she says, hey, Mommy, when are we going to take this guy out? So, on the advice of counsel, i.e. my 9-year-old, 6 months later, 9 months later, I had a decision to make, and not an easy decision. I was going through a divorce at the time, becoming a single mom, and I was like, how am I going to do this? I love what I'm doing in the State House, but seeing what's happening to my country right now, I want to do something. And when women run, women win. So we need more women to run, so we have more women to win in Congress. Absolutely. But it was one afternoon in the spring of 2019. Again, it was my daughter. She had just turned 10 at the time. And she came to me one afternoon and she said, "Hey, Mommy, I'm Christian. I believe in Jesus Christ, and I need you to take me to church." So I had not been to church clearly in a very, very long time. So that Saturday night, there was a Saturday night service in church. And I took my kids to it. My daughter Ellie went to the Sunday school. My son joined me in the adult service that night. And the sermon that night was on Jeremiah 6:16. It was about being at a crossroads. And the passage says to go stand in the road and look for the good path. Look for the right path and stand in it and walk in it. And I just came to tears. And my son looked at me. He was so worried. And he put his arm around me, and he said, "Mommy, I love you. It's going to be okay. We are going to be okay." So I knew whatever challenge I had, whatever decision I made about running for Congress or quitting state legislature, whatever it was, we were going to be all right. But of course, I couldn't pass up the chance. My daughter would not let me. So in 2019, we announced our run for Congress. And this was the most expensive House race in South Carolina history. This was a $29 million race. And at the same time, Senator Graham had his reelect, and Jamie Harrison had just raised over $120 million. Senator Graham raised over $120 million. I don't know, it was a lot. Y'all can ask him at 6:30 tonight when he speaks. And they were spending a lot of that money in Charleston, where I am, because this is a swing district. And it is the 10th fastest growing district in the nation. So you throw a part of South Carolina into the mix with New York, Texas, California, Florida. This is the 10th fastest growing district in the nation. Then you put COVID on top of it, and it's growing even faster than ever before after the census. And no one thought we could, honest to God, win this race. But we had a lot of folks here tonight, all across the country, chipping in to help us get there. And we won by 1 point, or 5,000 votes. There were a dozen or so seats that we flipped this past November that you all supported across the country that went from Democrat to Republican. And we won because we had the right message. And when I look at the future, what the future of our country holds, I thought we were at a crossroads in 2019. But in the first 6 months of this year, President Biden had done more damage in 6 months than I thought possible in 4 years. And this was before Afghanistan. This was before Secretary Blinken sat in the Hamptons as Kabul fell. This is before Biden sent his cabinet to a classified briefing for Republicans and Democrats a number of weeks ago on Afghanistan, and they filibustered. And they did not answer questions by Republicans or Democrats. This was before the crisis at the border. And I was just at the border a few weeks ago with Senator Ted Cruz. And we spoke to not only elected Republicans, but elected Democrats also. Do you think that they are happy with the Biden administration based on the... No. They are furious. Not only is our Border Patrol being overrun by illegal aliens, they are now being attacked by the administration. They are spread thin. They don't have the resources. They don't have a mission. And they love the job, they want a mission, and they want to save our country. I say all of this because my seat isn't very red. I represent a swing district. We've got to keep all of the swing district seats. And then we've got to go out and we've got to win. I don't just want to win a dozen. I want to win like 24 seats. And these seats are going to be seats with independents and moderates and swing districts. And when I look at the roadmap ahead, you've got so much that the independents are being ignored and they feel like they're being left behind. And I want to be sure that we give them a home, that we give them a place to land. Because if we can't do that, my biggest fear is that the independents are going to stay home in the midterms. And can we win a seat in the midterms? If we won it by 1 point this past November, can we win it in the midterms if they stay home? We can't. So we need fighters, but we don't want to pick fights. We need fighters. Thank you. We want to fight. We want to fight. We need fighters, but we don't need to pick fights. And that is picking fights with each other. That's picking fights with the other side. We need the independents to come home. We need to give them, not only do we need to tell them about all the problems that are facing our nation, we need to tell them what our solutions are. We need to, for the first time in a long time as Republicans, do what we say we're going to do. We did it under President Trump with tax cuts, with prison reform. We need to get spending under control. We're going to have to reverse 42 new tax cuts in this infrastructure bill that'll pass. 42 new tax hikes that we're going to have to roll back when we get in the majority in a year and a half. Yes. So I'm here today, and I want to say thank you, but I want us to work together and remember this is serious. Our nation's future is at stake. We are at a precipice and a crossroads that I never thought possible. So when we talk to our friends, when we talk to our family, when we talk to people at church, talk to our communities, remember this crossroads. Take their hand, show them the right way, and walk in it together. We've got to save our kids and our country. Thank you, and God bless.
Please welcome Representative Matt Maddock.
Are you guys ready to take over our schools and take them back? Are you ready to take back our elections? No more poll watchers. We're not going to watch them anymore. No more poll challengers. We're going to be the poll workers this next election cycle. My name's Matt Maddock. I'm a state representative here in Lansing, or not here in Lansing, but in Lansing. And I'm doing my best to represent the Republican wing of the Republican Party. There's thousands of us here on the island today, but what is the fake news going to report? They're going to say there was a couple dozen right-wing extremists, right? Exactly. So I'm here to introduce Mr. Sean Spicer. He's a great guy. He's a former communications director for President Trump. And for 6 long months, this guy did a bang-up job. He served as communications director. He spanked the hostile media, infected with the Trump derangement syndrome, didn't he? He's probably also one of the few people in the world besides President Trump who actually know what the word covfefe means. Today you can watch Sean slicing and dicing up the fake liberal news media on Newsmax, America's fastest growing real news network. He may not be the best dancer in the world, but you know what? He still has President Trump's back. Give it up for Mr. Sean Spicy Spicer.
That's the introductions, yeah. Thank you. We got any Newsmax fans out there? All right. That's great. I don't know what's tougher, following Nancy Mace or competing with the Michigan football game in Michigan. Thanks, Ambassador Weiser. I appreciate it. So I take it you all went to Michigan State. Okay. Ever since I left the White House, I made it a big deal not to podiums kind of give me a freak out a little, so I want to step aside. It's interesting. I met Ron Weiser back in 2011, just to start off with an understanding of who I am and how I got here. I had just gotten off active duty, and I had been in politics for 20 years, doing congressional races and working on Capitol Hill. And I really wanted to just step back from politics, get a 9-to-5 job, maybe some stock options, have a weekend to myself. My wife and I wanted to raise a family. I got introduced to this guy named Reince Priebus. Reince and I hit it off, and I was like, this is going to be great. It's my dream job to work at the party. I was named communications director. And I had all these grandiose plans. So excited to finally have this dream job. And then someone explained to me that we were $26 million in debt. And they were like, so you can have all the dreams, we just have no money. But it was up to Reince and Ron to go out there and rebuild the party. And we went from $26 million in debt to hundreds of millions of dollars in the red. And that was because Ron Weiser in particular, never stopped working for the party. And it was funny, him and Reince would do these contests to see how cheap they could be when they traveled. So they'd go out to raise money and they'd say, well, I ate at the hotel lounge, I ate this on the plane, and I have no expenses. And they would try to figure out who could be cheaper and raise the most money for the party. But it was that kind of dedication that Ron Weiser brought to the RNC and frankly got us out of the hole. I'll spare you the details, but the long story short is this. After about 6 years of doing media for the RNC, which I probably numbered into about 500 television hits, the closest I ever came to being recognized was in the sweater section of a Joseph A. Bank. And by that I mean a guy walked up to me and goes, hey, aren't you the Republican guy? I called my wife, I'm like, kind of famous. And that changed real quick on December 22nd, 2016, when President Trump called me at 12 in the afternoon and said, hey, let's do this. And my life was forever changed because of that call and that decision by President Trump. And it was amazing entering into the White House because I had spent a lot of time working for different members of Congress. I had spent 3 years as the assistant U.S. trade rep, which, by the way, there was a little bit of irony that I promoted massive trade deals under President Bush, and then I had to tell everyone why they were not so good under President Trump. And they were like quoting me to me. They're like, well, Sean, you used to say this. And I'm like, yeah, don't pay attention to me. So anyway, it was the honor of my life to serve as the White House press secretary and communications director. We went to battle every day. Well, fast forward, everybody understands the last election. And I like to put it in the terms of, I think it was style over substance. I would constantly have these discussions, and I know every one of you has had the same discussion. Oh, I didn't like the tweet. Oh, the tweet. And I was like, okay, so how many tweets have made your life better or worse? Well, I know, but it's just the tone. Oh, okay, so the tone. Okay, so the country's moving in the right direction, and I don't think people fully appreciated the difference. The same way they didn't, I don't think, appreciated Trump versus Hillary until they got it and they understood it. But what we've gotten now is an economy that's in the tank, inflation on the rise, a horrible withdrawal out of Afghanistan. We're now seeing the consequences of what happened, right? And it was mentioned earlier during this panel. We on the right are up against every major institution. Big tech, government, academia, K through 12, and higher education. We got the whole gamut there. We're up against Hollywood. We're up against every late night show. We have no major institution that's right-leaning. Which, in a weird way, as a side note, I always take umbrage and I say, when we talk about this, I go, think about it. You're up against a mountain that high, and we still beat them in the race so many times. And that just gives me faith in the American people. You come to a conference like this, you see how many young people there are, and I go, okay, I know why we're doing something that's right. You see the party grow in terms of the minorities. You think people like Nancy Mace, all of these strong women. Think about the story that she just told, all of the challenges that she had, yet she chose to run in a swing district like that and win decisively. And I'm proud to be a conservative. I'm proud to be a Republican. And I think that we need to kind of get back to this because I think that when you start dissecting the media and what's going on, you realize what we're up against. Think about it just in the last week. Hunter Biden, Politico wrote this story that says, oh, guess what? Our bad. The Hunter Biden emails, they were right. And think about the consequences of that. As we're headed into an election, you have emails come out that talk about the business dealings between the son of then the vice president, who was running for president, talking about all these potential nefarious activities. Well, I can tell you, if their last name was Trump, we would have never stopped talking about them. But the media shuts out the discussion. It was a complete blackout. If you posted anything on Facebook or Twitter, you're canceled. You were shut down. You were blocked out of your account. The media was shaming anybody as Russian disinformation if they wrote anything about it. And then 7 months later, they're like, hey, sorry, we screwed that up. Those are some examples, but I always tell people that there's also things that you don't see in the media. Let me give you an example. The other day, The United States and Korea held the first repatriation ceremony in history. At Joint Base Pearl Harbor, Hickam, 38 South Korean soldiers and service members were returned to their country. And they came over and returned 6 of our U.S. service members. First time in history that there's ever been a joint repatriation ceremony. Do you know who came for Korea? President Moon. He flew to Hawaii. He brought his defense minister. Do you know who showed up for the Biden administration? No one. No one. Not a person. Think about that on 2 fronts. On the diplomatic front, the president of one of our closest allies flies to Hawaii, and we don't send the deputy undersecretary for PowerPoint to greet the guy. That's just diplomatically an embarrassment. Secondly, the families of 6 service members finally have the closure that they deserve. And not anyone from our government is there from the administration. There was a military official to say thank you for your service. Thank you for what your family has had to go through. We're here to honor the service and sacrifice. No one but Newsmax covered that. I tweeted it out. I got 25,000 likes on the tweet. There was clearly interest on it. People all throughout the country were like, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. The next day, and I got all the trolls that said, oh, that can't be true. You're lying, because, that's what I do. And so the next day, the South Korean media took a picture of the military official in Hickam greeting the South Korean president. And I started clipping the picture, and I just can't help this because I'm Irish. I was sending it back to every troll saying, here's the picture for you, buddy. No one showed up. But that's the problem. We get on the short end of this, no one actually, if we don't tell the story, if we don't highlight this, you see the White House press secretary now saying that these immigrants that are coming over our border, that are coming through, these tunnels underground, coming through lakes and ravines, are only here for a short period of time. I mean, I'm sorry, I came to Mackinac for a short period of time, but I took a ferry, and I know how to get back. These people are not here for a short period of time, and the White House press corps is like, okay, Jen, thank you very much. No one's pushing back. That's what we're up against. And so I think that what we need to do is to remember, I know what Congresswoman Mace was saying, there's a difference between fighting and informing. I had a conversation with someone very close in my life the other day, and we were talking about immigration, and I said, blah, 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 all these people that are coming in, and they said, do you really believe the things that you say about immigration? Or is that just because, your show and everything? And I said, what do you mean? He said, you couldn't believe that. I said, okay, let me ask you this. How hard is it to stop them from coming over the border? We had Remain in Mexico, Title 42, all this stuff. If we kept doing it, they wouldn't come in, right? Well, yeah. Well, we undid all those policies, and now they're coming. 15,000 people from Haiti showed up. Just as a reminder, Haiti's an island. This isn't like Star Trek where they went, and then came over here. They had to leave an island, come up the coast, and then under a bridge in Del Rio, Texas. How are they not getting picked up? Why is our government not doing this? And I think it's a fair question. But think about what's going on in this administration. What do they want to do? They want to make D.C. a state. Why? Because the Democrats will tell you because they want voting rights. Okay, well, let's just stop for a second. The District of Columbia was created by parts of Virginia and Maryland. Parts of Virginia that wasn't needed anymore was given back. I live in that part now. If you don't need the other part and you just want to carve it out to a small federal district, give it back to Maryland. It's an easy thing. We did it before. We can do it again. Why should it become a state? Oh, because a state would have 2 permanent Democratic senators. Aha. Interesting. We talked about this on the panel on these voting rights things. We allowed all of these things to go into place during the pandemic to make voting easier. And now if you don't support everything that happened during the pandemic, then you are a racist. All right? Think about this. Think about it from the employee standpoint. Many employers said you can work remotely. If you don't get to just continue to work remotely infinitum, are you a racist? No, the pandemic is easing. We have a vaccine. You can start to safely go back to work with all the blah, blah, blah. Right? In the same way, you can go back and vote safely again. Shouldn't be any different. But again, we're getting caught, we're losing the argument. It's like what I like to call the big why. In isolation, each of them looks like one little thing. Talk about them in totality. Why are all those things happening? What do they have in common? Why are they trying to pass a massive spending bill and bloat government, get more people on? It is all in pursuit of a Democratic permanent majority. And think about it. If you have two Democratic senators, which is what D.C. is, I mean, I'm all one of those guys that wants to turn, blue states red. I mean, D.C. is 96-4. Like, we'll focus on, the Midwest for a while before we get to D.C., maybe even California. And I'm thinking, but each one of those things has that in common. They are all part of a bigger plan. If you want to stop people coming over the border, you do it. But if you look at them as potential voters in 10, 15 years, you let them in. Think about all the people that are coming in from Afghanistan, and God bless the ones that helped our troops. Believe me, I have no problem. All those people who served alongside and helped us fight, I'm for. But the administration told us that they were vetting all of these people. And then when under question, in testimony, the secretary said, well, we're not really vetting them. When a measles outbreak happened in Virginia, we said, well, I thought you were screening them for health reasons. No, we're not doing that either. So we don't know who they are, we don't know their security risk, and we don't know their medical information, and yet we're letting 30,000 people in the country and spreading them around. What's going to happen to them in 5, 10 years? I guarantee you that is the next iteration of Dreamers. They're going to say these people deserve citizenship, they need to vote. It's all part of the plan, and I think that we need to understand what that plan is. I do want to say that I think Congresswoman Mace was talking about we need fighters, we don't need to fight, and I agree with that to a point, but I think that what we need to do is, more importantly, inform. When we have these discussions, when we engage in the process, when we push back and tell people about what this administration is doing and what their policies are all about and call out the hypocrisy. What you all have done in Michigan to expose Gretchen Whitmer, there's a reason she's not implementing mandates like she did at the beginning. She knows the hypocrisy was called out the first time. I mean, maybe when she gets her boat back out of the water, things will change. I don't know. But I think that what we need to do is to understand that our job, we're all the choir, right? Everybody who comes to one of these events, you get it. But our job is to go out now and to find 4 or 5 other people. Because when you look at how close Michigan was in 2016, 10,603 votes, I think. Chairman, where is he? That's pretty close. 3. Sorry, I was off by 3. We realize that when we go out, we mobilize, we inform, we win. The left's total goal is to shame us into not activating. That's why they want to cancel us. That's why they want to ban you, is because they know that we on the right, we have the principles, the policies, and the facts on our side. Everything that we talk about makes sense. Think about all the stuff. I spent 3 years as the communications director for the House Budget Committee. These guys were against dynamic scoring, i.e. the idea that a dollar spent has an impact well beyond the $1 in the economy. Suddenly, they've become apostles of it because they now want to use it to show how spending impacts. They'll do whatever they have to change their position to meet their ultimate goal. And so our job is to get out there and to help people who don't understand, because more and more people are tuning out what's going on. They're not watching the news the way they used to. They're disgusted by the process, what have you. But I think that when we go out and have those one-on-one conversations, we remind them what's at stake. People have now seen, I think in a very concrete way, the difference between Donald Trump and Joe Biden and the effect that that election has. And so whether you care about the economy and you look at the inflation and what things are costing you, whether you look at foreign policy, the adult in the room, the guy that was the chair of the Foreign Affairs Committee in the Senate, has offended Boris Johnson from the UK, twice now actually, because they just shuttered him out of the Oval Office the other day. We didn't give him a heads up when we were pulling out of Afghanistan, which might have been nice. France recalled its ambassador, and as I just mentioned, what happened with South Korea. So apparently the guy with all the foreign policy experience may not have been the right guy on that front. And then you go through all the other policies that are getting pushed down, and I think that there isn't a person in America with a brain that can't say, I get it now, I see the difference. And so if we can present an agenda and ideas and facts, we win. Up and down the ticket, on issue after issue, there isn't an issue that we as Republicans can't do this. So, as I said, I think that it's tough when you come to an organization like this because you all get it. But as much as sometimes the party needs money, the biggest thing they need is action. Getting out there, having those conversations, and it's uncomfortable. I've been yelled at, a lot of things. So it's not easy in society anymore. It's tough, I get it. But if we don't let our voices be heard, we lose, they win. And so that means engaging in the system, supporting conservatives, helping the candidates out, knocking on those doors, and doing everything you can to recruit new people into the process, into the system, especially young people. So it's an absolute honor to be able to be here with you and to spend the weekend here. You know, I was 2 or 3 weekends ago, the president had a rally in Alabama. And it's Saturday night, and I think it was Birmingham. It's pouring rain, and I don't know, I gave up crowd size stuff, but let's just call it 30,000 people, right? I've learned my lesson on that kind of stuff. But I'm thinking to myself, it's a random Saturday night, it's pouring rain, and 30,000, 40, whatever number it was, show up to hear a guy who's not running for office. You walk into this place, whether you've walked around the hotel or down the street, I don't know what the number is, Chairman, 1,500, 2,000 people of huge, diverse backgrounds, young and old. We have the enthusiasm and the energy. People are fired up and ready to go. We've got this. But we have to keep our foot on the accelerator and make sure that we finish strong. So, you know, I will tell you, the one thing that's interesting is when I started at Newsmax, the first week we got our ratings, and I was like, oh my God, like there are almost more people on YouTube that follow me than are watching the show. And I was like, this isn't gonna work. And slowly but surely, every week, boom, boom, boom. And it got up, and then the next thing you know, I'm looking at the ratings last week. Wolf Blitzer's been on air since 1990. He's had his own show since 2001, and I'm nipping at his heels, 18 months in. But it's because, and as much as I like the show, and I think we do a good job, it's because of you guys. Because every time I talk to somebody, they say, I talk to Newsmax. We don't have the biggest advertising budget in the world, but it's people talking to people, calling their friends, sending them a link, saying, you gotta watch this. We gotta do the same thing with our candidates. Pay attention to this guy. Check out this woman that's running for school board. We need to encourage them. We need to help them raise their profile, make sure people understand what's at stake. As I said earlier, getting involved, encouraging those folks, whether it's school board or state legislatures or town councils, that's where the fight is these days. I mean, I cannot believe the stuff that's going on in schools. And every time you think it's a joke, you realize it's not. And they understand this. The left understands if we get to these kids early enough and we indoctrinate them with all of these left-leaning things, we have a big head start. I just want them to get to learn, like to read, to do math. These guys are doing all sorts of subjects that I don't really sure why they're appropriate at like 6 years old. But the point is that when we push back, we win. You look at these videos on school boards, when people were out there lining up, getting their voices heard, suddenly the facts prevailed and the school board said, okay, we're gonna dial this back. You look at voter ID, people around the country were talking about the fact of how much it made sense to show a voter ID, because it does. And what did suddenly the House Democrats say? We've never been against voter ID. You know, I mean, but we won because we had the facts and the principle on our side. And we need to keep doing that, because when we argue, and we argue well and logically and civilly, that's the other thing. I agree with Congresswoman Mace on that front, definitely, which is that we need to start engaging in a way that shows that we're better than them. They want to yell at people and do all sorts of stuff. I want to win them over. I want more people on our side than theirs. And the beauty is, like I said, the facts and the principles and the policies are with us. So with that, I appreciate your time. I thank you for being here. I'm going to give you a shameless plug. I have a brand new book called Radical Nation that's out, or coming out, and it's available for pre-order. I would love your support. In this, I talk about that why and explain to people. I mean, you look at the confirmation process that happens in here. Just a quick heads up. Dennis McDonough is the head of the Veterans Administration. He never served in the military. He never was affiliated with any veterans organization. He doesn't have a medical background at all, which is the only other person that wasn't a veteran was Dr. David Shulkin, who had served in the VA and is a doctor, which healthcare takes a disproportionate part of the VA's resources. So why did he get appointed? Oh, because he worked for Obama. Why is Susan Rice the head of the Domestic Policy Council when all of her background is in foreign policy? Because they needed a place for her. Why is Pete Buttigieg the Secretary of Transportation? I don't know how many trucks there are in South Bend, Indiana, but I think there's more people in this room than there are buses there. But somehow he fit the bill. Why? Don't ask me, ask President Biden, because when he was confirmed, President Biden said, I'm very pleased to have the first openly gay LGBTQ member running a department. Not you're the most qualified. It's I want to check another box. And I think that we need to understand that, and that's why I wrote this book, is because I was like, if no one brought these things up in the confirmation process. The media is not going to tell you them. We need to go out there and inform our friends, our coworkers, our family members what's going on in this country and have the tools and the resources and the facts to fight back. Thank you very much. It's been great being with you.